I am a soccer or football fan, but I don't know who's playing for Real Madrid right now. I don't keep track of like the big good teams. I only keep track of my local Södermalm team, Hammerby.
But how much are you following Hammerby? Like, how big of a fan are you?
I'm a big fan. When I lived in LA, they would come out and do like a training camp. I went to see them practice and play, like they play friendlies against the US national team, LA Galaxy. Some of the highlights of my life, it was incredible. And I remember my American friends were like, you're talking to this like 19-year-old kid from Sweden and you're like sweaty and shaking and all nervous. Like, is this like the new Ronaldo? I was like, no. But he plays for the national team. Like, no. They're not even like that good. But in my mind, they're heroes.
Episode 39 coming your way. Club 30. I'm Henrik Lundqvist, your host. I'm sitting here with my good friend Jay Lydell.
Hey, Henrik.
How are we doing?
We're doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for today.
Today?
Yeah.
Swedish guy.
I need to practice my Swedish, so this is going to be perfect.
I mean, how many times have I'm not going to say invite you, but sort of invite you to Sweden. It's been a few trips.
Yeah, probably 4, 5, 6.
You start to get the culture a little bit.
Definitely the culture, not so much the language.
Not so much the
it's
language.
It's not an easy one from English. I don't know why, but it's...
No, it's the way you... the tongue.
Yeah.
English is more in the front, Swedish more in the back.
Guttural.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a front guy. I'm all up front. No substance in the back.
Today's guest, a friend of mine, known each other for years. Incredible actor. He's been part of so many great shows and films. He's funny. Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah. You know, depending on the character he plays, you can either be like, the reaction, at least my own reaction is, that guy is repulsive, or I could be that guy's best friend. Right?
Oh, he's so easygoing.
Yeah.
You know, I've taken him or we've been hanging out at the garden for games, you know. And,
yeah.
He enjoys sports for sure. But again, he's pretty quick. He's funny. But he's doing a lot of press. I know that. So we'll see in what shape he'll come in.
Yeah, hopefully this is not another heavy lift for him. Let's try to make it easy for Alex.
Yes, he's here to promote a film, and we'll get into it right now. Let's bring in Alex.
Episode 39, coming at you.
Today's guest is a fellow Swede and one of the most versatile actors around. You've seen him as a vampire in True Blood, a Viking in The Northman, and a tech billionaire in Succession. Now he's starring in a new Apple TV Plus series called Murderbot, playing a cyborg who's somehow one of the most relatable characters in his career. Welcome to Club 30, Alexander Skarsgård.
Tusen tack, Henke.
Tusen tack. That's how we say it in Swedish.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's great to have you here, my friend.
And pleased to be here.
How's life?
Life is pretty good. Pretty good. I'm a little. No, I'm good. This is the tail end of a 2-week press tour for the show Murderbot, and so I'm depleted, but happy and excited. And
yeah,
it's been good.
We touched on it before we started the show here, that promoting a new series or film, the amount of work that goes into it, how much you have to talk about it over and over.
Yeah.
It's almost like you a little bit get tired of yourself.
And even a narcissist like myself, it gets to a point where you're like, you're almost sick of your own voice. And especially when you do the junket portion of it, when it's like short form, like 4-minute interviews, and you bang out like 60, 70 interviews in a day. And you hear yourself repeating yourself a lot. Like you kind of have your go-to answers, and I start loathing myself. I just like,
you know what's coming,
that.
And you're like, I'm going to say the same stupid thing again.
Just like, you know, I don't think I should be too hard on myself, because like, it's hard to have 70 great answers to the same question and be like, oh, you want it to be intelligent and witty, and you're exhausted. So you end up kind of like saying what you just said, and we try to do it in a fresh way. And it's just like, I need a shower after a day like that. I just feel disgusting. Like I hate myself.
Well, before we get into the new show and your career, I want to talk about Sweden a little bit. You moved back to Sweden after living in the States for a long time, right?
Yeah, I did.
It's been a couple of years now in Sweden?
Yeah, I moved back. It was kind of a slow transition. I got a place. I was here in New York. I was started out in New York, moved to LA, and then back to New York. And then about 5 years ago, I got an apartment in Stockholm where I was born and where my parents, my siblings, my child, in my heart has always been my home. And then I started spending more and more time out there and just really loved it. I hadn't been back in 20 years. I mean, I've been back visiting, but I hadn't had a place there. I was sleeping on my dad's futon for 15 years when I was there. So this was the first time I had like my own place in Stockholm, and I just loved it. So it was like slowly I started spending more and more time there up until like 2 years ago. Then I actually sold my place here in New York.
Was it different? Obviously, you touched on it. You've been going back to Sweden between work and being in LA and New York, but now actually moving back, was that a different feeling? Obviously, it's on my mind once in a while. Will I ever move back to Sweden? I don't know. But how has that experience been to move back? And
I love it. I mean, to me, it's and I'm also fortunate enough to I love New York City. I miss New York City. But I'm also here. I was here 2 weeks ago. I was here 6 weeks ago. I come here quite regularly, so I get to see pals like you, Hank, and other friends, and like walk around my own, the streets I lived on for many years, like like in my old neighborhood in the East Village, and so I get that fix regularly. Yeah. But having a base in Stockholm it just relaxes me. I just like it's so nice to come home to that and have that as I don't work much in Sweden, so for me to go off on crazy adventures and work and in different countries around the world, but to be able to come home to Sweden, to have like my parents, my siblings, my childhood friends, and walk around like my old neighborhood of South Stockholm where I grew up, it means a lot to me.
So that's really where you recharge in a way.
It really is. It is. And again, most of my friends back in Sweden are not in the industry. So it's a good way for me to just switch off and just like hang out and go to a Hammerby game and just like be with my old childhood friends. I feel great about the decision of moving back.
So I've been taking my buddies. Jay, you've been to Sweden a bunch. Yeah. Some of my other American friends have been inviting to Sweden. To our U.S. listeners, what's the best part about living in Sweden, in your opinion?
Well, to me, I know you're from Gothenburg, which is also a great city, but to me, Stockholm is a good sized city because it's there's about 2 million people in Greater Stockholm, but it's big enough that you have culture. There's great theater and art scene and great music, lots of live venues and stuff. It's vibrant, but you also it's a clean, quiet compared to New York City. I'm an old man. I like when it's quiet at night. You can swim in the city, 15 minutes, and you're out in the pine woods, or the archipelago, these islands outside of Stockholm. And you obviously have similar in Gothenburg, an archipelago outside of the city. So for me, it's a sweet spot of like, it's big and fun, but it's not too crazy. And then culturally, it's just, it's also, I connect to it, obviously. I grew up there, so it feels like after 20 years in the States, coming home, and it's a very, very civilized society, and I think a good place to raise a family.
Yeah. What about you, Hanky? What do you get from your summers in Sweden?
No, but it's reconnecting with my roots, with family, friends, culture. But for the last 20 years, I've been back during the summer. Yeah. And you know this, Alex, like people are so happy and outgoing and the energy's high because it stays light until like 10:30, 11. Yeah. So the energy is so different. So when I retired, 4 years ago or so, we started going home for Christmas, and I forgot how dark it could get during the winter. Yeah. Has that had any effect on you? Like,
not really.
I didn't go home that's why I kind of forgot.
To me, it's like if you long for, if you're there and you think about sunshine and warmth, and if you long for it, then you're miserable.
Yeah.
But I try to kind of lean into the darkness and the fact that it is cold and gray and miserable.
It sounds amazing, right?
But I try to lean into it and like make the most out of it. Like we have a little cabin on one of the islands in the archipelago, and you go out there, you sit in the sauna, you light a fireplace, you light a fire, and it's cozy in a way that I actually kind of enjoy.
You embrace it.
I try to embrace it, yeah. And it's also, when it's proper winter, it's gorgeous. Like it's beautiful. Like when you get like the snow on the ground and just like ice on the lake, it's just like, it's special. The rough part is November isn't fun. I can't because fall is great because you get, it's with the foliage, the 4 seasons, similar to New England, but late fall is a bit hard. But again, like I know it affects most people more than me. I don't really.
You also get away
because it's always sunny in my heart, boys. It's always sunny in my heart.
That is so sweet.
No, again, because I lived in LA for many years, and I kind of missed the dark, cold winters, because you have those transitional moments throughout the year, the 4 seasons, and how different they are, and this time of the year in Sweden, it's incredible because you have people have been hibernating for months, and then it's warm and sun, and people come out, and it's just like the energy is palpable.
And I always try to explain to people why Swedes are the way we are. I think big part of it is the season, but also the darkness. The further up north you go in Sweden, the less we talk, the slower we talk.
It's the same in Canada.
Versus, going down south, they speak a lot quicker and they're more outgoing. And so it has definitely an effect on the people. But I also feel like as Swedes, we create really strong connections. We might be tough at first to connect with, but after a while, if you get in there and really connect, I feel like we create deep bonds with our friends and our surroundings.
Yeah. We're also not used, historically, it's geographically, at least for European countries, quite big. It's the size of California, which is obviously, compared to the U.S., very small, but most European countries are the size of Manhattan, Right. So it's like, but it only has today a population of 10 million, but a couple of hundred years ago, it was just a few million people in Sweden. So it wasn't a densely populated country. So, and I think that also, you're not interacting with strangers that often. People lived deep in the woods in a small cabin. So you had your little family, but you didn't really meet strangers that often. That insulates you in a way.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about why you're in New York City, other than the fact hanging with us, right? You're
That's
here
a
to
primary reason, obviously.
Second priority.
Yeah, we don't need to rank them in order, but Murderbot.
Yeah.
What attracted you to jump on this show and tell us about the experience of shooting it?
I came off a couple of projects that were quite intense and quite dark in tone, and characters that were quite dark, like the Northman and a movie called Infinity Pool, that were both deeply disturbing. Great experiences, but also just, again, tonally quite dark. And then I got sent the script for the first couple of episodes of Murderbot, and I knew that it was going to be a sci-fi action adventure show. And when I heard the title, I expected something more similar to kind of RoboCop, or something kind of centered around a character. I mean, the title is Murderbot, so I thought it'd be okay, this badass, tough space dude who's out there, very self-assured and and confident and just kicking ass. And then I started reading it, and the character was something completely different. It's this socially awkward android who hates interacting with humans and just wants to watch soap operas. It's hacked its own government, so it's gained autonomy, independence. But it's been able to hack the company satellites so you can hack into all the entertainment feeds, basically. So it spends its days just procrastinating, talking about these adventures that it's going to go on, but it ends up just like watching soap operas. And there's like zero level of testosterone or like eagerness to get into battle or anything. Like, it doesn't want to do any of that. It's like a cheap, lowest rent security unit in this sci-fi world. So it's not even like a good like android. It's not a tough guy. Like, he can beat up a human, but like there are definitely way more advanced versions of security units. And I thought it was just such a delicious, fun character. Like, I completely unexpected to me. So that got me excited. And again, the tone of the show, it's sci-fi action adventure, but it's filled with comedy. And that was after a couple of years of playing quite dark characters in dark projects. I wanted to do something lighter and more fun.
What was the biggest challenge? Creating this character. It sounds like the surprise in it kind of got your attention.
Yeah.
You were expecting something and it was very different. But in terms of a challenge, I assume you face different challenges depending on different characters, different projects. But biggest challenge shooting this one?
Well, reading it, I really fell in love with the character. But then how does that translate? And because the character so desperately tries to avoid communicating with humans and is also an android who doesn't, I knew that like the physicality of Murderbot and the way it speaks should be very economical. Like, it doesn't chit chat. It doesn't move unless it has to move. Everything is like precise and there for a specific reason. And not a lot of facial expressions. So of course, in a way, for someone who likes to ham it up, like myself, I get a bit like insecure because I'm like, is this just going to read boring? Are people going to connect with Murderbot? Because I play it very like deadpan. It just doesn't really react a lot. There is voiceover, like an inner monologue going throughout that is way more bubbly and lively to balance it. But in terms of challenges, I was in the beginning like, well, will people respond to this, or is this super boring? I hope not. I love the character, but we'll see.
I mean, you played everything from vampires to Vikings to tech CEOs. When you're looking for a new project, what are you focused on? Is it the surprise element, or do you want to really connect with the character when you read it? What are you looking for when you pick a new project?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, I have to connect with the character. That's like the first step. If I don't.
But do you do that as you read it, or is that a work in progress?
It's a very visceral, like just instinct. Like, I read the script and then I'm either curious about the character or I'm not. Like, if all the answers, they don't have to be there, and it's actually good if they're not, because then there's a journey, a way for me to kind of explore the character. If everything is on the paper, that's less interesting. But it's also, if I don't get it at all, or if it doesn't excite me, the thought of, because you got to spend from the moment of reading a script to actually like sitting in a chair talking about it like we're doing today, we're talking like 2-3 years normally. Like, I first met Chris and Paul Weitz, the writers and showrunners of Murderbot, almost 3 years ago. So Murderbot has lived in my head for 3 years.
Wow.
Huh.
So that's an awful long time to spend with a character. So you want to make sure that it's a character that you want to hang out with
Sure.
for 3 years.
In that time, did you develop a kind of I don't know if androids have backstories or context, or because it wasn't all on the page, how did you spend that time thinking about it?
In terms of backstory, like the character's memory was wiped, which was great for a lazy actor because it means I didn't have to do any relaxing.
Nothing there.
Yeah, but that's also part of the mystery of like something bad happened before the memory was wiped, and there are occasional moments on the show where a massacre pops up in Murderbot's head that it was potentially the perpetrator of. And so it's like a PTSD moment, something before the memory was wiped happened, but it doesn't really have any memories of what happened before that. So that wasn't, building the character wasn't so much like figuring out when it was built or what. You see in the opening episode how Murderbot had spent its existence up until now, which is it's pulling security for a bunch of assholes, as it calls it, the miners on a distant planet, and they treat Murderbot like a piece of inventory, like they're partying, they're vomiting on Murderbot. They're just like, so that has been its entire existence up until now, and now it finds itself surrounded by a bunch of scientists that are very different from the normal clients that it's been assigned to protect. These guys are space hippies. They invite Murderbot into the camaraderie, into the communal areas of the habitat, and they ask Murderbot how Murderbot feels and what Murderbot thinks, and this just freaks Murderbot out. Like, it's like obviously on some level flattering, but it's also terrifying because Murderbot hates human interaction. So a lot of the show is about like that dynamic between Murderbot and these humans, and how it slowly starts to kind of against its, it really doesn't want to form a relationship with these humans. It desperately tries not to, but then it slowly, throughout the first couple of seasons, it starts to build
like a cyborg coming of age.
A little bit, yeah, finding its own humanity in a way, yeah.
Huh. You can watch it on Apple Plus, correct?
Yeah.
Premiered last week.
Yeah, the first 2 episodes dropped on the 16th, and then there'll be an episode a week for the next 9 weeks.
I mean, when you go through your, your career, you've been part of so many great series, films. We got True Blood. I love Big Little Lies. I thought you were awesome. Succession. We start with True Blood. That was a massive hit here in the U.S. especially. But can you talk a little bit about that experience and where were you at in your career? Because it's been a few years now.
Yeah. I was at the bottom, baby. Well, yeah, I'd spent several years in LA I could not get a job. Like, I auditioned for everything and could not get a job. And I met an audition for Alan Ball, the writer and showrunner of True Blood. This would have been in probably beginning of 2007. My only credit out there was a small cameo on Zoolander in 2001. And after that, I hadn't worked in the States. I'd done smaller jobs in Sweden. I would I stayed mostly in LA, but would go back to Sweden and do odd jobs in movies and TV series in Sweden, just to kind of be able to pay the rent, and then went back and kept auditioning, but couldn't get a job. And then auditioned for True Blood. Didn't hear back. Auditioned for Bill, the other vampire. And of course I didn't hear back, like a gazillion other projects I auditioned for. And then I finally booked a job, which was Generation Kill, another HBO, a limited series about the war in Iraq, which just blew my mind. I was at a point where I didn't think my self-esteem was very low, and I suddenly got a job and found myself in Namibia with incredible actors and working on this show by the guys who did The Wire. I don't know if you remember the show The Wire.
Oh, yeah.
David Simon and Ed Burns. So that was, finally, I got an incredible opportunity. And when I was in Namibia, they called about True Blood. Because then I'd forgotten about True Blood, because again, it was one of several projects I auditioned for, never heard back from. And basically said, hey, this thing is getting active now, and they're interested in you for this role, Eric. And can you audition for it? And they're going to go now this fall of 2007. And I was like, I'd love to, but I'm in Namibia and this is a 7-month shoot. So I wasn't going to be able to do it. But then there was a writer's strike in Hollywood. So shows that had already been written could continue because the writers were on strike, but everyone wasn't. And that pushed True Blood. So they were supposed to go in the fall, but when the writer's strike hit, they had to push to beginning of 2008, which meant that I could finish shooting Generation Kill. And when we wrapped, I went back to LA, auditioned for True Blood, and I ended up getting it. So the writer's strike was kind of helped. Otherwise, had it not been for the writer's strike, I would not have gotten the role of Eric.
And
so thank
really
you, all the
took
writers. I know you did it for me.
Up for you.
Thank you for standing up for me.
But what was your expectation when you signed on? Did you know it was going to become this massive hit? Or
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Alan had done 6 Feet Under, which was a terrific HBO show prior to this. So I knew that it was a very, very talented showrunner. But it was also, and this was like pre-Twilight, pre-like vampire craze. So I was like a Viking vampire running around, like, I don't know. Like, but I just worked for HBO on Generation Kill, and that was a really good experience. I was like, all right, it's Alan Ball and HBO. So like, you know, but I never anticipated it, like, or expected it to become like what it became. How big? Yeah, no, not even near.
So after that, you start building momentum a little bit, you could say, after that show.
Well, yeah, the first season, I was only in, I believe, 7 of the 12 episodes. And I had a, kind of looked like Fabio. I had like a long wig. So, it was a bit more of a kind of peripheral antagonistic character the first season. And the show was picking up momentum and was getting popular, but I didn't. It didn't really, like, no one ever recognized me or anything. But it was when the second season started, because then I started to look more like myself on the show, and the character kind of grew a bit and became a bit more central to the storyline, and that then, and I think simultaneously the show also started to pick up a lot of steam and kind of hit the zeitgeist in a way. So that, yeah, it got crazy.
How did you, stay, I don't know, patient or confident? You talked about all those years before. Suddenly you booked 2 jobs, but it was a few years there where you said it was hard to get booked out in LA. How, as an actor, how do you stay confident and believe that it's going to happen?
I don't think I was very confident. I just don't really have a plan B. I was just like, I'm pretty mediocre at most things. I don't know, like, I'm not going to be a great hockey goalie. I know that for sure. So like, I was like, I'll keep trying. Hopefully, there were a couple of occasions where at least you got the carrot. Even if you didn't book the job, you were close. And that gave me a little bit of momentum, or where it's like, because often it was just crickets after audition. You heard nothing, But then there were occasional moments where it's like, it was a project and you got close. You went in for a couple of callbacks, and then maybe you didn't get it, but you still, like, you felt it. You're like, all right, that gave me a little steam to kind of keep going.
Yeah, it felt like you were getting closer and closer to the break.
It's a Swedish resilience,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, I didn't know if I was getting close, but it was like, again, like, it was just like, okay, it's at least like, I'm on the field. Like, at least, like, it's not like I'm auditioning for a gazillion things. I never hear anything. That would have probably broken me. At least I got occasional callbacks, which was like, all right, like, but if I just keep going, maybe the right project will pop up at the right time,
Yeah, I think no plan B is like the takeaway, right? Like, if you have, or the idea of unlimited options, you really have none. Like, because your focus is on everything and planning for, well, if this doesn't work out, if you only have one thing, then that kind of breeds that resilience, hard work ethic of just like going back to the ramming your head against the wall.
Yeah, and I also was in that, in a strange way, I was fine with the thought, like, well, maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and there's no more gas in the tank. I'm like, all right, this didn't work out. Then I'll go home. That thought didn't scare me that much, because I was like, well, then at least I tried it, and it didn't work out. But then I can leave that behind, and then I'll go be a hockey goalie or something.
Yeah, and then
never too late.
Never too late.
Never too late. especially for men's league.
Yeah.
In that time, I mean, you obviously you come from an acting family with your dad. Did you ask him for advice? Like, did you say, was it kind of like, is this typical? You know, this ramp in your career, or
no? Because he had a very different trajectory. Like he never did pilot season in LA. He was an established actor in Sweden, and then he did a couple of jobs that took him out to Hollywood. It wasn't like he went to Hollywood with got off the bus with a briefcase and like was like, hey, can I get a job here? So he was never, you know, he never lived in the States. He never like, he was handpicked basically because he worked of his body of work in Sweden. I knew that was going to happen because I didn't work. It wasn't like I was a big star in Sweden. I wasn't working on like prestigious big movies in Sweden either. So I was like, the stuff that I went home and did to pay my rent in LA were mostly like supporting roles in movies that I knew would not travel to the States. It wasn't like, oh, people are going to see this and going to go bananas and like they're going to ask me to come out. You know?
Did he say anything during that time, or he said, "Yeah, we'll see what happens"?
No, I think in a way I was very stubborn and adamant about like finding my own path, and I was like this, like, and even to this day, I don't know what I should have asked him. Like, you know, he wanted me and all my siblings to be happy and creatively fulfilled, and just like, but there wasn't like, this was something I had to do on my own and just go out and try it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, Jay, you touched on it. You come from a family with a lot of acting, and was that something that just watching your dad, you were so inspired, or did he try to teach you guys like this is how it's done, or just sitting around and see what he's doing? Is that inspired all of you?
I was very set on not becoming an actor when I was a kid. When I was a teenager, I was like dead set on like, absolutely not. I'm not going to follow my dad. That would be embarrassing. Like I'm going to, you know, find my own path and do my own thing. Whereas Gus, my brother, who's also an actor, he always knew that he wanted to be an actor. And he was like, all right, I'm going to go to theater school in Stockholm and I'm going to do this, and like very determined. I was like equally determined, but like the fact that it was just going to stay away from it. I'm not doing it. Yeah. And Dad, he was just not. I was almost at like he wasn't involved, but he was involved. But he didn't try to push us in either direction. He was just like, he wanted us to be happy. He was always there if we wanted to talk about it or ask for advice or anything. I think I, again, was very clear on like, no, like I'm going to do my own thing. And here I am, an actor, so I clearly didn't, but I gave it a shot. I tried for several years to do other things, but then kind of gave up. And he was very supportive, always. Like he didn't try to push me. He understood that, because I was a child actor up until I was 13. And when I say child actor, it wasn't like a child actor in Hollywood. It wasn't like I had a representation or like worked all year. Like I would do the occasional odd job, like in the summer during the school break, you know. But I did something called Hunden som log, a TV film, when I was 13. And back then we only had 2 channels in Sweden. So it got a little bit of attention, and that made me really uncomfortable. Because I was 13 years old, and you don't want to be recognized. Like you don't, at least I didn't. I wanted to be very normal and just like blend in. And Dad appreciated that. Like he understood it. He became very famous when he was 16. So he understood that like it's hard and it can be scary.
Yeah.
Like, and he was incredibly supportive when I was like, this is not for me. So I like decided I didn't do anything for like.
You took a break.
Yeah, but in my mind, it wasn't a break. It was just like, I'm not doing this. And then, so I went to school, like political science, didn't study theater. I was in the military for a year and a half. I lived in Leeds in England, just drank and went to football. And then when I was like 20, I realized I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was like, am I good at anything? Probably not. Like I was kind of at a loss. And then I asked, and I told that, and then I said, because I did remember like when I did act a little bit when I was a kid, that I really enjoyed the actual job. It was everything around it that made me uncomfortable. So I was like, well, I'm a grown ass man now. I mean, I was 20, but at least I wasn't 13. So I was like, maybe I should give it one more go and just see how I feel about it, if it's fun, before I dismiss it. Because I could also see that even though Dad didn't try to like steer us in a specific direction, I could see how happy and fulfilled he was creatively and how much he loved his job. And that obviously affected me in a way where I was like, wow, that's something not everyone has that privilege of like getting out of bed and being excited about going to work. So then Dad helped me out to get it. Like I wanted to go to theater school here in New York, to college, Marymount, Manhattan on the Upper East Side, and auditioned from Leeds. I lived in Leeds at the time in England, and got in, and Dad helped pay the tuition. So he helped in that regard to kind of so I could come out here and start acting. And as soon as I got here and I started, we started doing little plays at the theater school. I felt like, all right, I'm home now. This feels fun.
The process of it. What part of the job did you wake up most excited about, or the?
It was the collaborative nature of it, the creativity, the individuals that It was a great fun class of like. It was just, I was just like thriving. I was really enjoying it, and then I dropped out. And for those 15 seconds, I loved it.
I mean, we touched on earlier that you played so many different roles, different types of movies and series. I mean, one of my favorite series, Succession. I mean, you were part of the end of the show, but I thought your role was so good. Lucas. How was that show? And watching it, sometimes it felt like I was watching you a little bit. Did you bring a lot of yourself into that role?
How dare you, sir?
He was a good guy.
No, but the humor, like the way he was, it was just funny. He was quick and like I just loved it.
It was a dream. It was such a So Jesse Armstrong, the showrunner of Succession, he's a British comedy writer, and he did a show called Peep Show, a terrific British show. And he worked a lot with Armando Iannucci, who created some of my favorite comedy shows like Alan Partridge and The Thick of It and Veep. So the pedigree is just like, again, my comedy heroes. And I thought the first 2 seasons were extraordinary of Succession. So when they reached out, and at the time it was only going to be a little arc at the end of the 3rd season. Initially it was going to be 2 episodes, and then it ended up being 3. The character was going to pop in a few scenes. But I immediately told my agents, like, if it's with Jesse Armstrong and I love the show and the tone of it, like, of course I want to do it. So yeah, it was, it was like a fan getting to join you're playing with your heroes, like, and then I was lucky enough that they, for the 4th season, wanted Lucas to come back, and so I got to join them for that one as well.
With the clan.
Yeah. It was obviously a really juicy, delicious role to play because it's such a troublemaker and just kind of like throwing a wrench into the whole thing of like it was, and the writing was exceptional. Like it seems like a lot of it is improvised, but it really isn't. Some, like, a little bit sometimes, but most of it is just like, even the banter back and forth is like, the precision of the writing was exquisite.
Yeah. I'm actually rewatching it now. Yeah. I have a bad memory, so it feels like almost like I'm watching it for the first time. But I'm just sitting, like, now I go back and forth to Atlanta a lot. So I watch the show. It's like, I can't wait.
Yeah.
And I'm watching for the second time.
It's better.
I agree with you. It's so well written.
Yeah, he's a genius, legit, Jesse.
Yeah.
Is it different for, we've had a few actors on the show here last couple of years, but obviously now, it used to be a lot focused on movies, but now there's so many great series coming out over the last few years. It feels like the market has changed a little bit. Is it different for you committing to a film versus a series?
Well, it depends on in a way, it's a privilege when you get to work on a project like Succession and you have more than 90 minutes to develop the character. You can actually like develop it over several years. The downside of it can be you have to commit to several years on a show that's not Succession, that's not that where they keep renewing your contract. And obviously this is a champagne problem because you're an working actor, then you shouldn't complain. But creatively, it can be a bit draining. I've tried to, since True Blood, I've done mostly limited series, or again, Succession it was a couple of episodes and then I came on to do a full season. But I've done mostly movies or limited series because, again, if you're going to sign on, when they do a show that could potentially run for many years, they often want you to sign on for at least 6 years. And I feel like you want to be incredibly excited about the job in order to do that, because that's a long time playing a character. And I was very lucky, obviously, on True Blood because it was a super fun character to play. But so there are pros and cons. It's great if the writing is good and you're having a good time, then to develop a character for over many years, fantastic.
Yeah.
If it's less good, then not so fun.
In Succession, it almost feels impossible that they could have adapted the writing from that kind of short cameo that as planned to integrating you fully into the, because it's such an amazing arc and it feels like they started from the end and worked backwards to get to all the details in place. It's a really I never knew that, like it felt like Lucas was an integral part of the entire story. And so is it really that dynamic where they say like, oh fuck, Alex is amazing in this, he needs to be part, and they rewrite the arc of the story?
That's a question for Jesse.
Sure.
Because I don't really know. All I know was like they reached out. It was going to be about these couple of episodes, and at the time it wasn't like, oh, and then we're doing another season and this is going to happen, can you sign this contract?
Yeah. It
was just like I came in, I think it was a total of like 4 or 5 days the third season,
and you're just so fucking good.
But I can see, like, obviously in terms of where it's going and the fact that like someone was going to try to take over the whole company. Again, I don't really know how to answer because it's like I don't know what Jesse had in mind. But when they were planning season 4, I didn't know whether I was going to be on the show or not. Like the other actors obviously knew because they had a several year contract and they knew their storylines. But for me, it was just like I don't know. And Jesse called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming back for the next season?" And then he was like, "And this is kind of how I think it could play out, and da-da-da, and maybe you have this assistant they send Frozen Blood Breaks to." And I was like, Jesse, you had me at hello. Like, I'm sure they could, I mean, again, he's a phenomenal writer. They would have figured out a different way, even if I weren't part of the fourth season, they would have made that dynamic and interesting with someone else.
I find it interesting, fascinating with when you look at actors, what type of roles they're, getting or accepting, and the projects they want to work in. And I look at you, being from Sweden, Swedish culture, you did the army back in Sweden. How much do you think your upbringing affects you as an actor, and what path you're taking? Or is it strictly just what interests you in the moment that's going to dictate what you take? Or do you think your upbringings has any effect in that?
Well, they're probably interlinked. I think that obviously...
Did military affect you at all as a person to do that in Sweden?
I think it did in many ways. I don't know if it affects my choices today in terms of like projects I choose. I did it because it was at a time where kind of the Cold War was over. Russia was never going to be a threat ever again. Everyone in Sweden was just like, everything is good. It's all great. We're, military service was still technically mandatory, but it was very easy to get out of it. But again, I didn't really, it was during those years when I definitely didn't want to be an actor and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I came from a very like bohemian urban family. Grew up in Södermalm in South Stockholm. Definitely not like outdoorsy family people. Like everyone was just like, writers, poets. My dad actor, and like it was a very, very hippie vibe. So maybe it was as a way for me to rebel against all that, to do something very different from like my dad would never have done anything like that. And so, I was just out one day walking through central Stockholm, and some dude, a recruiter, handed me a pamphlet for like hijacked, which was the name of this unit. And they obviously made it look like,
Badass.
It looked so badass. It was like Navy SEALs vibe, and pictures of like cool dudes in like kayaks and swimming and jumping and like, rolling off fast boats. And like, it was just like, and I was 19. I had no idea what I wanted to do. It's like, all right, I'll do this. If I'm going to be in the military, this is what I want to do. It was out in the Arctic. We were technically part of the Navy, and our job was to kind of protect the islands, secure the islands from terrorism or sabotage. And it was, I didn't do it for any patriotic reasons. Again, this was like during a time of like the peaceful years of the late 90s, where it wasn't like I got to defend Sweden. I didn't do it because I loved guns. I did it because I wanted a personal challenge, and maybe rebel against my hippie family. And so, yeah, I think I learned a lot. It was mentally and physically tough. And I served as a team leader, so it was also like a lot of responsibility. A small team out independently on the island, so it was. I'm in hindsight glad I did it.
All right, so we touched a lot on acting, Sweden, sports has always been. I feel like you're a big sports fan. We've been at the Garden for Ranger games, Knicks games.
Yeah,
I know you enjoy that, but your big passion is really soccer, football, right? And I know you're a big Hammerby fan.
Yeah,
Hammerby is a local soccer team in Stockholm.
Yeah,
for those who
and I am a soccer or football fan, but I don't know who's playing for Real Madrid right now. I don't know, like, I don't keep track of like the big good teams. I only keep track of my shitty local Södermalm team, Hammerby. So it's not like I don't follow the big leagues.
But how much are you following Hammerby? Like, how big of a fan are you?
I'm a big fan. Like growing up, I was a pretty hardcore fan, like very devoted. I went to all the games, and I went to away games, it was very kind of part of that culture in a way. I still am, like I still go, not to that extent, but I still follow Hammerby, and I when I'm home, I try to meet up with my old childhood friends and go to a game or two.
But when you were younger, if someone asked you to pick, be the star of Hammerby and win a Swedish championship, or be a well-known actor?
100% Hammerby.
How about today?
Like I got zero talent.
How about today, if you had to pick?
No, but I still I remember, so Hammerby, when I lived in LA, they would come out and do like a training camp in LA. And at the time, they were like, right now they're in the top league, and we're talking top league in Sweden. So it's not like they're not in the Champions League or like playing the big teams. It's like the Swedish league might be ranked 20th in Europe or something like that. It's like, it's not a great league. And all the good Swedish players, at a very young age, go to they play in Spain or England or Italy.
Yeah.
And at the time, Hammerby weren't even the best, like one of the top teams in Sweden. And a lot of the players were either very young or very old, or the guys that were in the kind of in their mid to late 20s were good, but never good enough to play. Like they didn't play for the national team or anything.
Sure.
But when they came out to LA, I went to see them practice and play. Like they play friendlies against the U.S. national team, LA Galaxy, and some of the highlights of my life. It was incredible because it was like, just to be that close to them. And I got to meet them a couple of times. And I remember my American friends were like, they're like, because I don't, like, growing up with a father who's an actor, I've met a lot of famous actors throughout the years, and I very rarely get starstruck. But my American buddies were like, you're talking to this like 19-year-old kid from Sweden, and you're like sweaty and shaking and all nervous. Like, is this like the new Ronaldo? I was like, no. But he plays for the national team. Like, no. They're not even like that good. But in my mind, they're heroes because they represent Hammerby and they play with the emblem.
Is there a team in the U.S. you could compare it to Hammerby? I feel like Hammerby is more than just a soccer team. I feel like almost like it's culture in a way.
Yeah, it's very, it's a working class team from South Stockholm, from a traditionally working class neighborhood that is now, with the classic case of gentrification, has become the very kind of the trendy part, hip part of Stockholm. But back in the day, it was also like they were kind of the punching bag for their two other teams from Stockholm that were way bigger, had much more money, would win the cup every year. Hammerby always had like a massive fan base of mostly working class people, but basically never won the league or the cup. We were just not even close. So a big part of Hammerby's identity has always been, we never win, but like it's even some of the chants are always like, we've never won the league, we've never won the cup, but we're here and we're loud and like that kind of vibe, So a very vibrant fan base. Well, you're from Sweden, like they're very like infamous, the Hammerby fans. Actually, I was at the game in 2001. They won the league for the first time in 120 years, and it was euphoric, but also like an existential crisis because our DNA was about like we never, like again, I told you, like the songs were about like we never win, but we're still like the loudest, the most hardcore, most devoted fans. And we take pride in like taking a beating, but then next Sunday we're still back, at the stands. And suddenly we were the ones to beat. We were the champions. So it was like this crazy moment of like, yes, but oh shit, we can never sing that song again. We can never sing that either. And like, but fortunately we haven't won since. So
and that's a good thing.
The songs are working again.
Yeah.
I mean, you work with so many great actors, been part of so many amazing projects. Is there someone that stands out to you that impressed you a lot in terms of just quality?
Oh my God.
There's so many.
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, you mentioned Big Little Lies, and that experience with Nicole Kidman to explore that relationship was incredible. It really was one of, another highlight. It
was a great cast.
It was a great cast overall, but like again, to kind of be able to go so deep and into something so dark and disturbing with Nicole was an absolute pleasure. And then I got to do it again with her on The Northman. A very different dynamic. We play not husband and wife, but mother and son, but in this very weird incestuous relationship. And that, two great moments working with her.
Is there anything that you haven't done in terms of film series that you would love to do down the road, or even actors that you haven't worked with yet? Is there something on your mind?
Not really, not a specific. I've enjoyed dipping into comedy a bit. I hadn't done much of that prior to, obviously with Zoolander. I started out with comedy, but then it was like many years of slightly darker, more intense projects. Succession was quite funny in many ways, and then Murderbot also has like comedic elements to it. Those are, I don't know. I think I'm very happy if I can bounce between light and funny projects and then deeply disturbing projects.
So we'll see.
We'll see what's next.
We'll see what's next.
Yeah.
Listen, I know you have a busy day.
We're close.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but really appreciate you coming by.
Tusen tack.
Tusen tack. That's how we started. Tusen tack.
Thanks, guys.
What's up for the afternoon off? What are you going to do now that you're back at New York for a bit?
Well, I've got more press.
Yeah.
And then we're shooting a little thing tomorrow morning, also for Murderbot press. And then I fly to Cannes, the film festival, this weekend for a premiere of a movie called Pillion, kinky gay biker movie.
Cool.
Yeah, that's something to something to enjoy down the road.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank you
Alex.
much. Appreciate it, guys.
So
Yeah,
good to
it's
see
great
you.
It was a
And,
great chat.
If we have time, let's grab a drink tonight.
Let's
and
do
if
it.
not, I'll see you back in Sweden this summer.
Låter bra, Henke. Ha det bra. Tjena.
Thanks, brother.
Big thanks to Alex for joining us here today at Club 30. Wow, he has a busy day.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. I mean, what a dude, though. He's so good. Yeah. I hope we provided him with a little bit of a relaxing break from his press junket.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we talked about it on the show that, when you do promote a film or a series, how much work it really is and how often you have to talk about it. And but I hope you guys are listening. We try to mix in a little bit of Sweden.
Yeah, some sports.
Yeah, acting. I still thinking about all his roles, and one of my favorite is really Lucas, though. From Succession. I thought he nailed that one.
And I think you're right. He did bring a lot of himself to that character. He's dry, very pensive. You don't get a reaction out of Alex. He offers it. So I enjoyed that because his character is one of my favorites from that show, and out of a lot of them.
Yeah.
The cool that part of the conversation I enjoyed the most, I think, was where we started and where we ended, which was we started talking about like seasons and difference, and he said he loved the winter, and it made me think like, oh, you know what? Like, it's interesting because he chooses not to maybe trust things that are too nice, and I think that resilience, like, sometimes it's like, oh, I want to move to Miami or LA because it's nice all the time. And what I got from him kind of throughout our chat was he kind of chose this way, whether it was walking away from acting for a time. The thing that wasn't just nice and perfect and set up is kind of the path he chose. And I thought that was a cool little takeaway from that episode.
Yeah, no, and I think what brings, and we talked about it, brings you back to Sweden when you grew up in Sweden is, the connection to the culture and the family of friends, right? But I think if you do make that move after living in the States for 20 years, you have to embrace the winter.
Yes.
The way he said. It's so true. It shocked me when I came back there after 15 years. I hadn't been back during the winter for 15 years. And I'm like, wow, I forgot.
Yeah.
It can be beautiful, but dark at times. But it has a nice effect on Swedish people, I think. And then we come alive in spring.
It makes you appreciate
I think so.
Yeah.
Really do.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We have one more episode of this season 5 coming to you next week. But thanks for listening today. Episode 39 with Alex Skarsgård.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. If you're not yet a subscriber, we'd love to have you on board Club 30. We're everywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you name it. We're there.
We're there.
We're there, and we'll be there next week.
See you next week.